They were rampaging along, won their first 2 games. They've lost their last 2, but they could have probably won both of them.
A fantastic looking facility there in the deep south.
I'm sure they're going to come out firing tonight.
From memory, he was leading last week. Are you going to be leading this week, or?
From bottom with 6 points and second from bottom with 5. Yes and no. Yes and no. It paid off for them. They got a 2, double the 4 and won 6 points. Depends what the teams above them do, doesn't it? Welcome to the Bowls Hour, brought to you by Somerset Retirement Villages and Dynasty Apparel. This is the official Bowls New Zealand podcast for talking all things bowls. I'm joined now by Alex Reeve, my co-host. Probably, I'm that co-host, you're probably the sort of grand poobah, aren't you? You're the senior, I'm the junior.
We wouldn't go that far, Miles. Co-host will do for now.
Well, I think senior and junior is good. We'll get to that in a minute. I think that's quite a sort of, a fortuitous statement that I've just made. On the show today, though, first, we're going to be talking to David Clarke, who's a magnificent bowler, Graham Reeve, who's a magnificent coach, and John McBeth, who's just John Macbeth. But more of him later. But when I said senior and junior, I can remember when I first started working with bowls and we were doing bowls 3-5, that someone came out and said, oh, yes, that's a junior bowler. And I think, what do you mean junior bowler? That guy's 75 years old. And I didn't understand. Can you explain to me, and to those who may not know about it, what is a junior bowler?
So in the old days, way back when, a bowler was a bowler, and there was no differentiation. You just played the game. And about 40 years ago, there's a guy from Point Chev, whose name's escaped me, sort of came up with this concept.
That's your club. You should know it.
Yeah, he's on the wall. He won the Peers with a jolly man, someone jolly, doesn't matter. It's not important to the story. So the junior bowler is, if you start playing bowls, you get put into this junior grade. So for the first 5 years of your bowling life, you're classified as a junior bowler, and there are a number of centre events and club events that you can participate in as a junior bowler. So, yeah, it's something that sort of, I suppose, is our version of a golf handicap at bowls.
Right, so firstly, can junior bowlers presumably can play against senior bowlers? They can enter whatever club or centre tournaments that they're entitled to go to. Presumably you can just play against them?
Yeah, they're allowed to. They're allowed to enter. So if you affiliate to your club, you can play in any event. So they are allowed to, but obviously the open bowlers can't play in the junior ones.
Yeah. So I can imagine that it was to try and not disincentivise people who are just trying to learn the game. I mean, you look at it, anyone can roll a ball down the green, but I tell you, having watched it closely and having played a little bit myself, it takes a hell of a lot to get to the level that these top players are playing at, or even top club players are playing at, rather than sort of national title winners and international ones. So I can understand the rationale for it. What are the pros of junior bowls?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great question, and that's why it was started. So it was John Fletch was his name. There we go. John Fletch created the junior bowling system in the early 70s, and it was originally for first and second year bowlers, and his vision was to have like a national intercentre for first and second year bowlers, and I think it was called the John Fletch Trophy. So the pros were you're playing with and against your peers and of people of a similar level. And it was designed to sort of, you get your start in bowls, you find some success early because you're playing against people who are as good as you, so you win as much as you lose. And then there's meant to be like a natural progression on to the open thing, and it is a good community of junior bowlers that we have had and do have at the moment.
What are the downsides? Because I know, even from my short experience in it, that there are people who don't think the system's quite right. So what are the cons?
One of the things we have is that it's really hard to tell how long someone's been playing bowls for, Miles. You know, we have Business House now. You're not a bowler. You're not technically an official bowler if you play Business House. So you could play Business House for 10 years and join up after 10 years, a decade of the sport, and be classified as a junior bowler. So you play in all these events, and you would be...
So basically like a burglar at golf.
Yeah, you
just don't hand your cards in,
yeah,
and then suddenly you go up and they give you this massive handicap, and you go and win you score 100 Staplefords on 3 holes. And I know you can't do that, but yeah, so basically that could happen.
Exactly, yeah. So that happens. You get people, like I played indoor bowls from when I was 8 to now. So for a long time I played indoor. I took up outdoor. I had an advantage because I knew the game. I knew how to play bowls, and that's half of it, is learning that. So
you were a burglar?
I wouldn't quite go that far, but for sure, I'd been playing indoor for 15 years. When I took up outdoor, I knew what to do. It's just how to do it. So, you could argue that's unfair, I think. So it's not a perfect system.
Yeah, but I mean, I think. How do you gauge anyone like that? I mean, you could get people. I've seen people that you go along that just start it and they pick it up like that.
Yeah.
Suddenly, So is that a disadvantage? I don't necessarily. I wouldn't subscribe to that view that that's an unfair or that's a downside of it. You want to bring people into the official system. If they want to spend 10 years doing that before they officially go in, I would say from the bowls New Zealand perspective, we've got someone else properly in the family, fully engaged, and they're going to probably now start taking part in and more likely to, if they're quite good, because they're going to start winning things. What is, I don't know whether you can gauge this. What's the experience been across the board for when you get to that 5th year and then suddenly in your 6th year, you haven't got these junior things anymore. You've got to go and play with the big boys and girls. Is it all for most people? Is it a massive leap, or is it an easy transition, or does there need to be an intermediate step?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's one of the conversations that comes up a lot when we're talking about junior bowls, because it's easy to get stuck into that circuit, if you will. So you're a 1 to 5 year bowler. There are clubs that have 1 to 5 year events. You play your 1 to 5 year stuff, and you don't play your open centre events. And you're still finding success because you're playing people of a similar skill and ability to you, and you get used to success in sport. And when they get to that 6th year, they're no longer eligible to play in these 1 to 5 year events. We do see the bowlers, the juniors that perhaps haven't looked outside of that junior system, struggle a bit in the open events because there is a skill and knowledge gap there. People have been playing for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. There is a knowledge
playing
gap.
Against, and the only way you can get better is by playing against people who are better than you, which is something any sport I've ever played. I want to do. I don't care if I get beaten 100-0 or, I mean, I've played a world champion in darts and he kicked my backside. Actually, talking of that, I've seen you play, mate. You could probably do quite well on the darts circuit if you put
I might get down to 100 or something.
Yeah, but if you put more time into that particular sport, is there encouragement? Is there stuff from Bowls New Zealand going out there to encourage 1 to 5 year bowlers to get amongst the open people?
Yeah, I suppose it comes down to your individual, when you start a sport, it comes down to who you're around and your coaches and stuff. So the centres try and encourage it, and good bowler, your top bowlers, and I put that in air quotes, if you speak to them as a junior, will encourage you to play in the open events. I mean, and we used to have a national inter-centre for juniors, and that was removed from the program a couple of years ago. So there's no longer really a national framework for a 1 to 5 or a 1 to 8 year bowler. It comes down to the clubs and centres. And in my opinion, I would like to see more juniors play in open events from the beginning. I think that would be beneficial to everybody because it's a quicker way to learn stuff. And I think your junior events, I'd rather see them as sort of like a nice extra to have. You can play in your club junior singles and there is a centre junior event, but your main focus for sport should be the open centre events, but I know there are people who would passionately disagree with me on that. So, yeah, I suppose from Bowls New Zealand's point of view, and I'm not speaking on behalf of them, I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but we just want people to participate in the game. For me, I'm more in a space where I like the idea of there being development bowls and open bowls. Because we've said it's so hard to tell 1 to 5 or 1 to 8 or how many years you've been playing. I think you can tell new bowlers to not new bowlers though.
Oh so, yeah. Have a look at me out there, mate. It won't be hard. What about, we mentioned burglars at golf and what about a handicap system? Has that been thought about?
Yeah, it has been. I think that's a really good idea. I think I wonder if that's an alternative. If we're thinking, yes, we need to acknowledge that we have new people to the sport, and yes, we need to create something for them to play in against equals or have success, because you want success, don't you?
Yep.
There's no point in starting a sport and then getting absolutely kicked to the curb every time you go out to play, because you won't continue playing. So if we think we need to create success for the bowlers, I do wonder if perhaps we could create a handicap system. So you're a new bowler, you get given a handicap of X amount.
Only when you're playing against open bowlers or in open competitions, and then I assume if you did it it'd take a fair bit of setting up. But in this day and age, in the digital age, and with all the sort of technological skills that you guys have got in programming, you could have a system set up where you get a handicap. Everyone gets the same handicap when they start. You can soon see the guys are thing. If your success keeps coming in, even as a junior bowler, your handicap will drop. And then if you play against other junior bowlers, maybe there's even a handicap system within the junior bowling setup.
I think it's great. I wonder if that's a solution. Personally, I think that would be.
I think it is
a good option, because
I think we should get onto it, get the program in there, get it out there, patent it, and make a fortune and send it around the world.
We'll see how we go, but I think it's for sure something to think about. And I'd encourage people to just think about ways we could better help the newer bowlers to our sport, for sure. And I'd just like to say that we're looking for feedback on this podcast. We want to communicate with you, the listener. So flick me an email at alex@bowlsnewzealand.co.nz with what you think. What do you think about the junior system? Are you a fan? Are you not a fan? Do you think it could be better? Do you think it could be worse? Anything's good, and we might read out your letter on air.
Right, we've got David Clarke. I'm looking forward to chatting to David. We've got David Clarke coming up next on the Bowls Hour, and we thank you for joining us and listening. This is a show for all things bowls. Don't forget, share this podcast with your friends, family, fellow bowlers, and anyone else you can think of. We'll be back again shortly with David Clarke. Oh, I really enjoyed that little chat about junior bowls with my co-host Alex Reed. And Alex has gone and got us a lovely guest lined up next. Who is it, Alex?
Yes, Miles. I've got David here on the line now, all the way from wherever David is. How are you feeling this morning, Dave?
I'm good, thanks, Alex. And hi, Miles. How are you today?
I'm exceedingly well, David Clarke, my old mate. How's it down there in the Reeve?
Not in Reeve today. I'm working in Ellerslie today at our Downer office, where I've been domiciled for a couple of years.
Right, sounds good. Hey, anywhere's good where you are, David.
It's not blowing today like it was on the weekend, which is great.
Yes, I totally agree. I tried to play bowls on the weekend, and it was an interesting time with the wind, but that's okay. So we're happy to have you on the show, David, and a lot of people will know you not only from your career, but you're also on the Bowls 3-5 as part of the Kites team. I was wondering if you could just tell us, how did you get your start in bowls? Where did that come from?
Well, family. So both sets of grandparents played bowls at Tapatoe, and my dad has played there for many years. He's a life member, and so I used to spend my days going up and helping Granddad put the big, heavy pipes on the green and push the big roller when I was, very young. And when I got to about 14, which is in '82, I decided to take up bowls in the summer and was playing rugby in the winter, which is quite an interesting challenge in the crossover of the seasons, but that's where it all came from.
It's slightly different sports as well, aren't they?
Yeah. It didn't tell too many of the rugby boys in those days that I was playing bowls in the summer, I can tell you.
That's fair enough. So you've had, obviously, a long career. Have you had any breaks in between?
Yeah. Back, we were lucky enough to win the national pairs with Mr. Galloway back in 2001, and a year after that, my young fellow Logan, he was 5 or 6 at that stage. And, bowls can be a little bit selfish when you win a few things. It leads to other things, and then it goes on and on. So I decided to take a break and join him in his growing years. And so I had a 15-year break from about 2001.
15 years, a big break. How hard was it getting back into the rhythm? Was it like riding a bike, or was it like starting to learn the game all over again?
It's just interesting in that time that the game changed a lot. I was still drawing with some very wide turning bowls back in those days, and when I came back, I got the bowls and the same shoes out of the cupboard and thought I could compete. But in those times, the narrow drawing bowls had come in, and I got taught a few lessons very quickly. And I remember a day out at Henderson when the green was running very quick and it was blowing a gale, and I was going 2 rinks wider than anybody else, and I quickly threw them away after that day and got a new set of bowls, which made me a bit more competitive in that environment.
Fair enough too. It is, yeah. I've been going through some old videos from the 80s that Peter Bellis gave me that listeners can look forward to seeing on the Facebook page. And so I'm going to digitise them. But yeah, look at those old bowls and people chuck them out 2 or 3 rinks and they come back in and almost back up towards you. It's for sure quite a different game nowadays. But I have got a question for you, Dave. So it's a commonish thing, but on your delivery, on your backswing, and people might know what I'm talking about, you flick your wrist or you flick your hand back. Did that happen naturally, or did you watch someone and decide that's what you wanted your delivery to look like?
Apparently, I've done it since day one, and I don't even know it happens. And when I see a video of myself doing it, I wonder where I did get that from. So yeah, I don't know. It's just something that comes naturally, and I've actually noticed my young fella who's now taken up bowls his first year this year has given away the cricket to play bowls, and he's actually got a very similar action. So yeah, look, it's just something natural. But back in the days when I started, and I had some very good coaches helping me along the way, the likes of Percy Jones, Bob Purcell in Australia, and John Murder. You know, those guys encourage you to do things naturally and then develop that for you from there. And so nobody ever tried to change me. And I think that's testament to some of the coaching skills that those guys had in those days, that they developed it for you rather than try to change you to be all the same.
That sounds like a great philosophy. And it seems to me that everyone has their own idiosyncrasies, and maybe bowls is a game even more so than something like, say, golf, where you're allowed to have those differences. I remember when we were doing Bowls 3-5, Grant Nisbet was one of the commentators with us, and he was having a roll up, and we noticed he's got no back lift. Like, he comes almost right down by the side of his legs and just goes forward. There's no backward movement, and he hadn't realised either that he'd been doing it.
I think one of the things to look at for a new bowler, and even people watching different games of bowls, different people, is you look at the step that people take. You know, we've always been taught to take a natural step forward to keep your balance, but a lot of people fall into the trap of overstepping and overbalancing, and then the weight control is just so hard. And then you've got the likes of Gary Lawson, who has obviously done well in his career, and you look at his step, it's very short. It's way shorter than what he would naturally do, but works for him. So just that one element of your delivery is so different between so many different people. Then there's no one answer, I don't think.
How hard is it? I haven't played much bowls at all, but I really enjoy it when I do. But I get, like anyone new at a sport, I get frustrated. One thing that I think that I make is the tendency to break my wrist on the delivery, like try and use more weight coming out of the wrist, which I'm sure is not the right way to do it. Any hints of how I can stop that, David?
Well, I think you look at your bowl where you're holding it in your hand. A lot of people will hold it in the front of their fingertips, and so they've got fingertip control. And other people will hold it right back in their palm and almost be spooning it like a David File. We call him Possum, with the Possum Grip, how he's always done that slightly differently to anybody else. And I think you've just got to work out what that combination is. So if you are having trouble with that and you're holding the bowl in the back of your palm, then maybe stick it in the front of your fingers and just see how that goes. But practice. You got to put the time in to be getting that sort of level of detail right.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose as long as you do whatever you do, every time you do it, it's going to be fine, isn't it? There's not too much of a worry. There's some very unusual deliveries out there, but the ones that are good are the ones that look the same all the time. So, where are you playing your bowls at the moment, Dave? I'm
at Manurewa Cosy Club at the moment. I had an interesting comeback to bowls when Papatoe is sort of on the border of the Auckland counties centre, and they made a move to counties back when I was playing there. And at the time I was in the Auckland rep team and felt I wanted to keep things going. So I moved over to Pakuranga, and it was very timely that Mike Galloway came up from Palmerston North at that time and we teamed up. So I stayed in the Auckland centre and then had that 15-year break. And when I came back, Dad was still at Papatoe, and I thought I should go back and play a few games of bowls with him. So I wandered my way back there and played a couple of years, and then made my way into the counties side. So and was very happy there, teaming up with people that we'd played against for many years ago. And then Papatoe decided to go back to Auckland, and I was caught in the same position. I was in the counties rep team, and I thought, no, bugger it, I want to stay in that counties team. I'm really enjoying the environment, and so I moved to Manurewa to be able to do that, and Taranaki consequently moved back into the Auckland team.
Fair enough. And you enjoy Manurewa Cosy Club? What's it like as a club? Is it a good club to play bowls at?
It's been really good, quite different for me. I've always been a member of a bowling club, so Taranaki and Pakuranga, only a bowling club, and joining the Cosy Club just gave me other aspects of club life, if you like, and been great for my partner Annie, who can enjoy the Cosy Club part of it as well as the bowls. And I've just the environment's great. We have some really good times out there, and teaming up with the likes of Shane Drabble, Gary Coppins, and those guys that I knew from many years ago has been a real good thing for us, and good for Manurewa and good for county.
Yeah, it must be nice to play with people who, we spend a lot of time beating everyone else up at bowls, so to play with them in a team can be good sometimes, David. So we've got one last question, and you've sort of answered it at the beginning, but we're going to ask everyone this, is if you were to inspire someone to play bowls, if you try to encourage them to come along to start up, what would you say?
Well, it's the fellowship of the people that you're meeting up with in the clubs. I would say to someone, don't be shy. Come on in, come through the gate, break down the fences, get in there. Bring a mate with you. It's always good in that first year of bowls if you've got someone that you can team up with that's the same experience as you, and then work your way into the club and meet the people. Learning the basics of the bowls is really important for someone new who's got aspirations to be competitive. When my young fellow started a few years ago, just playing one game every sort of year or two, I made him use those wide drawing bowls that we all used to use many years ago, just to learn the basics, and then after that, then use whatever you want. But just learning that draw game is going to get you out of a lot of trouble and make you very competitive. If you do all of those things in your first year, you'll quickly become competitive within that first year group. And other bowlers that are established will recognise that you've got the basics of the game and invite you into their teams. And from there, the world's your oyster.
Thank you so much for your time and for your advice there, David. All the best for 2022 for you and the Manurewa Club. And we look forward to chatting to you again later on in the year.
Thanks, Miles. Thanks, Alex. Great to be on.
David Clarke there from the Manurewa Cosy Club down there in Counties. Up next, we're going to have a chat with Graham Reeve here on the Bowls app. We had a good chat with David Clarke next. We had a good chat with David Clarke. See, my teeth are falling out now. But next up, we've got Graham Reeve, who I erroneously referred to as a coach, when in fact he is a top greenkeeper, and Alex has managed to get him on the line.
Yes, I do, Miles. How are you feeling, Graham, this morning?
Oh, very well. Nice day in Taranaki.
It's always a nice day in Taranaki, isn't it?
No, not so nice on the weekend. We kind of get blown to bits, but never mind.
Okay, so your name's Graham Reeve. So for Joe Blogg's bowler out there who doesn't know you, could you just what's your relationship between you and bowls, Graham?
I play at Inglewood Bowling Club, and I look after the greens there along with another couple of guys. So, we've been doing that now for a few years. I started at Glenfield Bowling Club in Auckland probably 25 years ago. We moved to Taranaki 16 years ago, and I didn't play for a few years once we moved. But, now I'm fully involved at Inglewood.
What's the difference between bowls in Auckland and bowls in Taranaki, would you say, Graham?
It's actually quite different. I mean, we were up there a couple of weekends ago to play for Birkenhead. The sheer numbers is the first thing. And, of course, Auckland's far more spread out. So if you're all playing in one bowling centre up there, you've got a whole lot of travelling to do, where ours is an hour probably most from the furthest points apart.
Yeah, to be fair, sometimes in Auckland it's an hour to go from...
from
10 yards down the road.
The different types of greens, I think, is another thing, Miles. We've got the volcanic soil, so everything grows pretty well here. As the guys that came down for the Open will testify, the greens are pretty good.
Everyone said that, how good the greens were down there for the tournament. And but what I was going to ask you as a greenkeeper, How many different types of grass are there that you use on greens around the country? And does it vary from region to region due to the soil, for instance, so that you can grow this type better than the other?
Yeah, it does. Definitely varies from place to place. We generally have Maniatoto, which is the predominant grass in the greens down here. We have starweed. I don't think there's many grass greens left around. Maybe over at, I don't know how far around it would be, but Maniatoto would be, and starweed would be the prevalent ones here. The Maniatoto grows very well. It's hardy. It welcomes the frost. And, yeah, it just goes very well down here.
Yeah, so see, as a peasant like myself and a layman, I look at it and I say, oh, grass, that's grass. But I've always looked at it and I said, it looks more like sort of crushed down, flattened down weeds. So what is Maniatoto? Is it a weed or is it? It is a weed. Okay, so you're a weed keeper.
Yeah, we're a weed keeper. And which you've got to read the chemical bottles really carefully before you start spraying stuff on it. Maniatoto is actually a place in Otago down South Island, and the seed or the plant grows on a mountain, so it can grow through anything basically. So it's worth gold to buy. So you try and harvest your seed when you can.
Fair enough. That's interesting. We sort of forget, I suppose, that the surface that we play on, even in the last 20 years, I suppose, Graham, has changed quite a lot, hasn't it?
Oh, it has. Yeah. And, as technology evolves and people get smarter in the way you do things, everything's coming on. It's just the same as technology, it improves as you go.
So the green you've got at Inglewood, is it? You've got a couple of greens there, don't you? How many greens have you got there?
We do. Yeah, we've got two. One's artificial. Yep. Which is our winter green, basically. We can play on in any conditions as long as you can be bothered going out in them. And the Maniatoto one we save specifically for summer. As soon as our season's finished, we shut it down and do winter repairs and maintenance on it just to make sure it's ready for the following season. But yeah, the Astro we've looked at replacing, but COVID kind of put a cobblers on that. So yeah, we'll look at that again in the future.
How much maintenance do you have to do on an artificial green?
Oh, very little. The very first one we put down some nice little people in Inglewood set fire to it, which kind of needed replacing after that. But since then, we put it's sand based, so we put a sweeper over it and lift the sand up after the rain. Apart from that, no, it's just spraying for moss and mould like everything else.
Fair enough. And so your Maniatoto green you've got there, what sort of challenges have you had with that? And just quickly, how long has it been a Maniatoto green for, do you know?
Oh, it's been for quite a while. We relayed it, I think, 5 years ago. We completely relayed the green. It will be 5 years now. So we've the challenges, there's always challenges, and it starts right from when you lay the first soil down when you're relaying a green. And the first lot of soil we put down wasn't fantastic. So we've had some challenges with growth, which we've got right now, but it's taken probably 3.5 years to get over those challenges with breaking down the clay areas and bits that just weren't right. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge, and it's a challenge every day. Every time you go and look at it, there's either fungus or there's grass grubs or there's worms or there's something.
But successful as well, isn't it, when you can get that green running nicely for people, and your club's one of the pretty regularly a host of the Taranaki Open. You get good feedback from people when they come to Inglewood?
Oh yeah. No, we're and we're a very friendly club. We only got about 80 odd members, so we're pretty close knit. No one sees himself as any better than anyone else in the club. It's a real friendly place. And when we've got things like the men's open on, the women have all this year all pitched in and did the lunches and the morning teas for us, which was fantastic. And we just like to make people, anyone that turns up, feel welcome and want them to come back again. So, yeah, that's just the way we work.
Yeah, it's a great club. I've been there a couple of times myself. Another question I just popped into my brain. We talk about, in bowls, often about the speed of a green, how many seconds a green runs.
Yeah.
Is there a sort of bowl, like how do you define the speed of a green? Do you have to roll up a bowl that a greenkeeper has kept in their shed, like in a case or something, or is it you just have a look at it and say, oh, that's running at X amount of seconds?
Yeah, no. Well, myself and Steve that you've played against up in Auckland, when we've mowed it, we set the mower height, we'll roll a bowl up it, and we'll be happy with the speed or we won't be happy with the speed. We may have it a bit slower in the early part of the season when it's still soft. As it dries out, we'll lower the mower slightly, but not too much. You don't want to scalp it. We optimally have it running at 17 to 17 and a half seconds, which seems like a good speed for the area. Any faster, if the wind gets up, it's a lottery.
That's the one thing, again, as a layman, that always fascinated me. You think, right, a quick green will be like 10 seconds and a slow green, it's 18 seconds. That must be really slow. But it's actually the other way around, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the other way around. And there is greens around a lot faster than ours, a lot slower. What we've tried to do with the help of the boys from Paratoot, who oversaw the renovations we did to our green, is we've basically got a group of greens around Taranaki, including theirs, and we try to keep them all the same. So when you're moving from venue to venue, you're basically playing on very similar to what you used to playing on at home.
Was that inspired, or was that like a result of the Taranaki Open being run there? Was that in mind, or was it just something that you guys thought you would?
No, that was done well before. The guys at Paratoot, and Paratoot who have the best greens in Taranaki, some might argue, but they're pretty good. So we've tried to model ourselves on their greens, so have Waimea, and Paratoot actually run that one. And there's more and more coming on board, just trying to get them as close to each other as they possibly can.
There's precedent that in big international events, because I know that the Auckland in the tennis for the ASB Classic up here, they changed their surface to be exactly the same as the one in Melbourne, so that the players, when they came over and played in that tournament, were already tuned up to the speed and the feel of the courts over there. So I think you've done a great thing there.
Yeah, and it is, again, that's just Taranaki. I know when we came up to Birkenhead, the greens were very similar pace to what we're used to playing on, but I know we a few years ago we went out to Attitude and they were running 20 seconds. So it is an individual thing and how the greenkeeper and the surface, like Starweed will run a lot faster, especially if it's damp. But yeah, we like to keep it as consistent as possible around the area.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, I didn't think we'd been talking for long, but all this time's a speed. So I've got a final question for you, Graham, that we're asking everyone. So if you were trying to encourage someone or motivate someone to join a bowling club in a few words, what would you tell them? What's the thing that would hook them in? Yeah,
it's just camaraderie, really. People you meet during bowls, like yourself, we come up to Birkenhead with you and Aidan, and those sorts of things you never forget, and you catch up with those people once in a blue moon. But yeah, I think it's just the camaraderie. And just you can play a competitive sport, and you can play it until you can't walk anymore, basically.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Graham. It's been great chatting to you. Give my love to Taranaki. It's the first place I lived in many moons ago when I came to New Zealand. And if next time I'm down in Englewood, mate, I shall pop down the club and see you all.
Yep, do that. We'll shout you a beer.
I'll be down in 5 minutes. Right. Right, now we're going to move on. We've got another guest lined up, and I've no idea what we're going to get out of this gentleman. He comes across as a consummate professional and the doyen of broadcasting. But when you actually work with him, he's like a very naughty schoolboy. John McBeth up next. Well, our next guest really needs no introduction, but Alex is going to give him one anyway.
Yes, Miles, you said he needs no introduction, but I have got John McBeth here on the line all the way from Raumeti. How are you feeling this morning, John?
I'm feeling absolutely fantastic now that the weather's improved a little bit and we've got sunshine and it's bowling weather again. unlike what we had at the weekend, Alex. Goodness me.
Yeah. I was in Auckland, and we did play a club event in Auckland in that wind, and I've never seen bowls do less what they're meant to do in my life.
Well, we were at Palmerston North for the octagonal, which features the centres from Wellington through to Gisborne East Coast and across to Taranaki. So, an expensive exercise for all those centres. They send their, 8 or 10 person teams, men and women. And we managed to get 3 games in on the Friday, squeezed an extra one in because of the forecast, and then managed 1 game on the Sunday. Some people standing, others leaning into the wind or against it, and umbrellas being blown away, all that sort of stuff, because as we all know, Palmerston North is a very calm city and never gets any wind.
Of course not. Now, I understand that you bumped into my ex-father-in-law down there.
Well, no, he came into conversation on the Saturday. Yeah, on the Saturday, Miles, when we were wondering what do you do on a Saturday with a bunch of blokes and there's no play. There are temptations. But anyway, I had some conversations with some of the team. There were a couple of guys. There's a Derek Taylor and Nicky Morgan, who are both out of Central Levin. And they were asking me about what I'd done, and I was asking them, who they'd met and who influenced them in their early days. And they both mentioned Don McIntosh. And I said, oh, great, All Black from the 1956 series, only one of 3 survivors now. And what sort of an impact did he make on you? And Nicky said, oh, we played in a 4 with him very early in our career, our first year. And Don was the skip. And he went up and shook hands with the opposing skip. And he came back and he just said, righto, boys, we've got the first 4 ends. And we looked and we saw the skip wringing his hand because Don McIntosh has a ferocious grip, which would have shattered bones in most people's hands. So he just, gave him the good McIntosh shake and walked back and winked at his team and said, we've got the first 4 ends, boys.
Now, John, I can vouch for that, mate, because when I first met him in Wellington many, many years ago when I was travelling over with his daughter to come back home for her, I shook his hand, and as I shook it, I thought, I better marry her. There's no other option now. I can't run.
Yeah, shaking hands with one hand and wiping the tears from your eyes with the other. Yeah. Yeah, very good. I loved it.
So you've been playing bowls for a little while now, John. How's this season gone? Have you had a successful one?
The club's gone really well. Raumati, as some people won't know, we had a Raumati South Bowling Club that closed, and we owned the property, so members went to other clubs in the Kapiti Centre. Quite a few of them went to the club, which is 351 steps from my front door, and consequently we took some money to that club. It's built up now. We've got, I just looked at the figures before we came on here, 254 members now. A lot of social members and a lot who are, full members who play galas or, club days, but more and more we're getting more competitive bowlers. And one of the highlights of the season really has been that 9 of our junior members, and most of them are year 1 and 2, have at some stage this season worn the Kapiti Centre colours. So we feel that we're on the right track, so that the newer members, and I'm not saying they're necessarily younger, some of them are still working, but they're not sort of the players that I saw at the octagonal, just out of teens or even teenagers. But we're starting to work towards that group. So the people that were brought in early, newer players, are benefiting the club immensely. So that's good. So I've won a couple of centre titles. We won the men's triples centre, and that team will be off to the National Champion of Champions. So they won the Champion of Champions, triples. And one of our new players, a second-year bowler, won the year 1 and 2 novice singles. So we're getting good results, mate. Very good. Yeah, we're very pleased with it.
I saw your photo up for winning something, John. What was that success? I'm sure I saw you win something.
Yeah, well, I was a member of the triples team that won the Champion of Champions title here. And you have those days, Alex, where everything you do seems to work, and I had one of those days. And afterwards, people said, well, we haven't seen you play like that before. I said, it's sort of like an average club cricketer who one day goes out and hits 100, So, but it was a good feeling. It's something I never thought I'd win. And, Kapiti is a small centre, but the competition's pretty fierce. So, we were chuffed to do that, me and the team of Reg Gostin and Neil Pritchard. So we fronted up and had a grin, and couple of beers afterwards.
I'm just wondering, John, I mean, you've achieved so much in your life and your career and had some magnificent moments that people like myself would be envious of. How did that rank in terms of your personal feeling and the enjoyment that you got out of it compared to these other things that you've done?
Well, I think it's one of those ones where you enter you actually are personally aware of what others that you might have commentated on feel. This was a centre title. It wasn't a world title but it's that sort of, for me, it would be a pinnacle. I never envisaged that I'd get into a centre winning team, a champion of champions team. And so to step up at my advanced age and do it reinforced to me that you can continue to improve, that bowls is a game definitely for all ages, so if I'm up there at 72 competing and able to compete with guys who are 18, 19, 20, then I think that says a hell of a lot for bowls. It's just, I've said it often and you guys agree that bowls is one of those sports where you can take it up late if you want to. If you've been a great a very good golfer, and you find that I can't get past a handicap of 8 or 10 or whatever it is, and you get into bowls and you're starting from scratch and you see yourself improve. It's great later in life to do that. But as we know, if you want to get into the top teams, you have to start quite young. So it's a long-winded answer to a very brief question, but it gave me a real thrill, Miles. It really did it. It's absolutely. Gave me a big thrill.
That's great. And you talked about commentating then, and you've done a little bit of commentating, I suppose, John, over the last while. And you've commentated bowls as well. Did you find it different to commentate bowls to some of the other sports that you've done, or is it a sport?
The bowls, I've always enjoyed it. Someone asked me when I first did bowls commentary, and it was in 1975 at the Nationals in Dunedin. Over that period of years, and I can't work out how many years that is, it's 45 or something, isn't it? 40 years or more than 45, yeah. So you pick up a lot in those intervening years, Alex. So it's experience but commentating on bowls, because I've been there and played it, understood it a bit better, worked with really good experts, such as, Terry Scott and those sort of people who knew the game exceptionally well, just made it a breeze.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a good answer. And I see, I'm not sure if you still are, but last time I spoke to you, you were the president of your club.
There must have been a long overdue coup by now, surely, John.
Are you still being punished for your sins?
Well, I said to everyone I'd do 2 years, and then I've ended up doing another year, so that's what happens. And there'll be people out there listening and laughing and saying, yeah, we know what it's like, mate. You say 2 years and it ends up being a lifetime. But I've thoroughly enjoyed it. We've made a lot of progress, and I'm not saying it's because of me or anything, but it's coincided with me being the president. Our numbers have increased. We've made improvements to the club. Our business house bowls is going well, even in this COVID ravaged situation. Lots of people are, interested in coming in and having a go. And it's been an enjoyable and rewarding stint as president. The problem is, as others will be saying and listening to this, is finding the person who's willing to come in and put in the same amount of effort. It's sometimes a thankless task, and as volunteers, we didn't sign up for all that's gone on in my period as president. In COVID and trying to handle that, and it's quite demanding, but rewarding.
Yeah, fair enough, and I think that's an experience shared by anyone who's
Absolutely.
been on any committee, I suppose. So, last question, John, and we've asked everyone this: if you had to encourage someone or try and motivate someone to join a bowling club and to take up bowls, what are the key points you would try and sell it with to them?
It doesn't matter what age you are to start, and we've just got interest from a 17-year-old yesterday, whether you're that age or whether, next week you're going to be, they're going to be hammering the lid on you. You can play bowls throughout that entire area or parts of it. If you're competitive, it's for you. If you want to enjoy company, it's for you. It's got everything going for it. And also, Miles, as you well know, the bar prices are quite competitive.
That was going to be, you've given a fantastic answer, John, but my one, how to encourage membership, cheap beer. So 2 words, it just gets it done. John McBeth, magnificent. Thank you so much for your time. Great to talk to you as usual. Congratulations on your champion of champions, and all the best for Raumati Bowling Club for 2022.
It's a thrill to talk to you guys. Thanks very much for the opportunity. Cheers.
John McBeth there. Yeah, I think it's been a very varied and interesting podcast. I was going to say show, podcast, doesn't matter, either one or the other. Yeah, I'm glad I managed to get my cheap beer in. I wrote that line and I thought it was a good one. Right, well, thank you very much indeed for joining us in this episode of the Bowls Hour. It's the show for all things bowls. Don't forget, share this podcast with your friends, family, fellow bowlers, anyone else you can think of. Just put out the link on your social media everywhere. We will be back again next week with more guests to talk more bowls. So until then, roll on. They were rampaging along, won their first 2 games. They've lost their last 2, but they could have probably won both of them.
A fantastic looking facility there in the deep south.
I'm sure they're going to come out firing tonight.
From memory, he was leading last week. Are you going to be leading this week, or?
From bottom with 6 points and second from bottom with 5. Yes and no. Yes and no.
It paid off for them. They got a 2, double the 4 and won 6-1.
Depends what the teams above you do, doesn't it? The Bowls Hour, brought to you by Somerset Retirement Villages and Dynasty Apparel.